Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is the upper tier, and tonight we have again another special episode because we're in the trenches on this international break that's killing us as club football fans mainly. So tonight we said we'd take a look at the Premier League Hall of Fame. Two names have been confirmed for this year's class, and four have still to be decided. I'm not sure this year why they've gone with six. Last year they went with eight. But what we'll do is I got the guys to send in their picks today, and we're going to have a chat about it, the three of us tonight. I think what we'll do is we'll get our thoughts, first of all, on the current members from the 2021 class, which I think is the first class that ever went into it. And then we know, obviously, that Wayne Rooney and Patrick Vieira have been confirmed for this year. And then there's four still to be decided. So I suppose we'll start with the 2021 class that's gone in there, which was made up of course, Alan Shearer. I think probably Alan Shearer had to be the first one really that go into a Premier League Hall of Fame, to be honest. Followed by Thierry Henry, Eric Cantona, Roy Keane, Frank Lampard, Dennis Bergkamp, David Beckham, and Steven Gerrard. Any thoughts on those names, or any comments or stuff like that? It seems it's not outlandish, really, is it, Darren? Thoughts?
No, it's not outlandish, but there's a few that are doing well to be held in that sort of company, I think.
Yeah, I would have thought, if I could just say straight off the bat, like, and this isn't my Chelsea hat, I'm going to put my United hat on here if I'm a United fan. Like, I'm thinking Scholesy straight away ahead of Beckham, personally. I think that may have been...
Not ahead of Becks.
Well, listen, Jason Cundy asked a question the other day. Has Becks ever put a true ball through for anyone? Can you remember one?
Yeah, loads. He used to do it all the time when he played in centre midfield for United.
What, like the two occasions?
Played about 50, maybe 60 plus games.
Yeah, he's not
Any United fan would know that, though.
Not Scholes. And that's fair. I'm playing devil's advocate here, to be fair. I do like Beckham. Good looking man. Best crosser of a ball ever.
Ever.
100%. But no, all I'm saying is, for me, that's the only questionable thing. I'd be saying, right, is there an argument there for Scholesy ahead of Becks? That's all.
Well, my argument would have been, who let Lampard in the first day?
Well, that's a non-argument. Move right along there, Niall, because, I mean, the lad had the most assists, most goals from a midfielder.
Stop.
Yeah, he was obviously shit. Yeah. The fact that you think Beckham is better than Lampard is actually hilarious.
1, 2, 3. He's actually the only guy in the Hall of Fame that's represented by 3 Premier League clubs: West Ham, Chelsea, and Man City. Funny enough, I can say it here because they list out the clubs as well, and the dates.
I think anyone that questions Lampard's ability as a footballer clearly has an agenda or doesn't know football. That's just
no. What I would question was, should he have been in the first 8 to go in? That's what I questioned.
Of course.
I certainly wouldn't question him going in and, the second or the third year. But if you're telling me he goes in ahead, of some of the lads on the list, not a chance.
Well, how does he not go in ahead of Beckham when he's the top goal scorer for Chelsea of all time? Literally clutch player.
Is this the Chelsea Hall of Fame we're talking about?
No, but like, what's your argument from not being in there? So how was he shit compared to?
Well, I don't think he's arguing from not being in there. I think what he's saying is the timing of him going.
Well, how does Beckham get in there ahead of Lampard, other than the fact that he played for United and he was a marketing dream? Explain that to me.
You don't see how you put Beckham in ahead of Lampard?
I don't know, and a lot of football fans wouldn't either.
Well, I don't think you can talk for a lot of football fans. I think you can speak for yourself. You definitely can't speak for a lot of football fans.
I can, yeah.
Personally, well, no, you can't. Don't be silly here now.
No, I'm not being silly. I think you're being absolutely ridiculous. The fact that you're saying
a lot
Lampard
of football fans would say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't say that.
A lot of football fans. I can, yeah.
You're talking out your Swiss.
But if you're mentioning that, say, in terms of Frank Lampard, is there a case?
I'm baffled. I'm actually baffled we're even having this conversation.
I'm putting on my Liverpool hat here now. Is there a case, should there be guys in there before Stevie? Would you argue a similar point? This is a question for Darren, obviously. Because I just think with Stevie and Lampard, it's so similar, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because big fish, small pond at the time, in fairness, Niall, because obviously Lampard was helping him
I don't think there's even an argument for Lampard and Gerrard. I think Gerrard's, a country mile better than Lampard ever was. Ever. And that's, you know what I mean? Stevie was twice the player Lampard was. Absolutely twice the player.
Ridiculous statement.
If you ask 20 Premier League managers tomorrow, you've one player you can have in your midfield, pick Gerrard or Lampard. 16 of them pick Gerrard.
How do you know that? You don't speak for 16 managers. You just told me I don't speak for a lot of fans. So I give you the same question. No, you don't speak. So you spoke to 16 managers. So I need to know your context.
I'm allowed to have a go at it now.
No. You're already talking pony because, Lampard's stats are better. So he also played in a team full of superstars and stood out even when the likes of Michael Ballack came. So to be fair, there's an argument to be made.
So he played in a team of superstars when Gerrard was dragging a load of fucking hunchbacking off the dams around with him.
Big fish. And how many leagues did he win? How many titles did he win?
Many Champions Leagues did Frank win?
One.
Just the one, was it?
Yeah, but he won one. So
win.
What's the argument?
When did Stevie win?
Sure, listen, when we win it this year, we're going to match the United record. So I don't know what your problem is.
Well, we win it this year, pal.
Well,
anyway.
Love you, Dazzler. We're off to a flyer.
Lampard's a bluff in there, man. Honest to God. And that's not the United attack. Because we could easily say the same thing about Gerrard if it was causing the United attack. I don't have Lampard.
Here's a better way of changing this up. In terms of the 2022 class, I presume we don't have a problem with Rooney or Vieira going in.
No,
not at all. Okay,
no,
that's fine. So that's okay. We'll get that out of the way. We can park that. So in terms then of the list of, I think there's about 30 left. I think in terms of the list, or thereabouts. You guys have had a look at that list, and I have to say today, trying to pick the next four, I found it quite difficult. In deciphering down, because if you look at that list that's there, the likelihood is everyone on that list is going to be in there eventually anyway, and that it's only a timing thing.
And that's kind of why when I looked at the list earlier, not to cut across, I'm like, why did they put a list out if they're picking four? Like, everyone on that list is eventually going in there. It makes no sense to give you a list and say, here's who's in, here's the possibilities of who's going to go in this year. As you said, everybody on that list should be going into this Premier League Hall of Fame. It's all just about staggering them over the years to fit them all in, Yeah.
What do you think, Dazzler? What do you think is a fair amount, say, on a year-to-year basis? Would you say 6 to 8, but just keep it consistent?
Yeah, I think 6 is loads.
Yeah,
I have to say, I think 6, because 10 years in, you're going to have 60 players. And you don't want there's so for me, here's one for me. See Lamps. Mm-hmm. I'd have had Gianfranco Zola in there much quicker than Lamps. Much quicker.
Fair, because earlier in the era, I suppose, as well.
Not even earlier in the era. Much better footballer.
Well, I'm not going to argue with that.
And that's my point. So for me, it's not a Lampard thing, or it's not a Chelsea thing. Well, it's a Lampard thing. It's not a Chelsea thing. It's absolutely a Chelsea thing. Here I'll go again. I would absolutely, and you're gonna look at me strange when I say this, I'd have Didier Drogba in there ahead of Lampard all day long. All day long.
Could be fair.
Genuinely. Well, look, that's just different.
I think Darren, what you've said there, none of those statements are going to upset Ian in any way. That's for sure. He's all in on any of those.
Look, we're going to have a bit of back and forth. Me and Dazzler have talked about this before in private as well. I understand it. Look, for me, I think my justification as to why I think Lampard is in there is my justification. I don't think I'm wrong. We might go back and forth and say, you don't know anything about football. You don't know anything about football. Look, it is an opinion-based thing. I respect Daz's opinion 100%. I see where he's coming from, and I'm sure he sees where I'm coming from. So look, it's fair. I think his statements are fair.
Yeah, and in fairness to Darren's points as well, he's been fairly consistent in his thoughts on Lampard all the way through the shows that we've done and stuff like that. So that's fair enough.
I respect it.
let's kick it off then. Darren, give us your first two picks.
Give me first one, yeah.
Yeah, give me your first one.
Tony Adams.
Good show.
Tony Adams, what a footballer, really was. And kind of obviously a throwback, because obviously we're talking about, late 80s, early 90s and stuff like that. And then I see, we changed things around an awful lot when Wenger came in, and, he became Tony, the ball playing centre half. And, it was that goal against Everton on the last day of the season really showed you the transformation between Tony the defender and Tony the footballer and stuff like that. I think Tony, he's got an awful lot of character with what he's been through himself in life and stuff like that. And I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's a super centre back. And I'd have Tony in there first. He'd be my first choice.
Yeah, I often wonder about Tony Adams, an absolutely super player and a great choice, Darren. But I often wonder about Tony Adams, if he hadn't have been battling some of those demons, how much of a footballer he would have been during that time as well. He was exceptional at even battling that, and what a captain as well.
Well, I'll tell you how good I think he could have been. Now, again, I'm going to scare a few people with this, but as Eno's saying, this is an opinion-based thing. I think if Tony Adams doesn't have to battle the demons that he battles, he's the English Franco Baresi.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I can't really find any fault with that statement.
Yeah, no, that's a great show.
No.
Ian, give us your first one.
So we're allowed to pick anyone now, or we're picking our non-agenda ones, yeah?
No, you can pick whoever you feel is your four for the show. Like, we had a bit of fun today on the WhatsApp group, obviously changing the parameters around, stuff like that. But I mean, if you want to put in a selection of Blues, it's your call who you want to pick out. It's basically we're trying to decipher down through the list of 30 who's the four you think at this stage that should go in. And that's why I'm saying it's a really, really tough choice, because there's arguments for every single one of them.
Look, I'm going to surprise you here on this one, because I was trying to be a little bit strategic with this. This is why when Dazzler mentioned Zola there, I 100% agree. So I was trying to kind of mix two old school players that were what made the Premier League what it was. Do you know what I mean? What really kind of helped build the foundation of what the Premier League was to become. So on my first choice today, you're going to be very surprised. I went with Peter Schmoykel. First goalkeeper that I suppose him along with Angelo Peruti for me were the first kind of two goal. I suppose Pagliuca was the first real big superstar for Italy that I saw in 1990. However, Angelo Peruti, was a great little stocky goalkeeper. Dazzler, I'd say you've been a goalkeeper, man. Similar build to you, stocky motherfucker. Looks like he'd be up for the fight any day of the week.
He did well to get out as a keeper. He was a fucking sport, God bless him. He was only small little lad. He was
he looked like he should have been in the New York mob, to be fair. But no, Peter Schmoykel, I remember obviously me being probably the only Chelsea fan in the school at the time, and everyone being mostly United and then some Liverpool. I remember the lads would come in with the Schmoykel gloves, the Schmoykel jerseys, a PE and all that. And then he was the first kind of superstar goalkeeper for me. And when I actually watched a little highlight reel of Schmoykel, I know Peter Cech is in this list, and it'd be easy for me to do that as a Chelsea fan, but I was trying to think, in the interest of fairness, I think, there was a case that Schmoykel could have even been in that first wave almost, because of what he did in terms of raising the profile of the Premier League. And I think Petr Cech's time will come, but I think definitely Peter Schmoykel, purely just because of that early stage. I think he's an absolute superstar. What, easily probably one of the top 5 goalkeepers of all time, I would imagine, in most people's books.
I think myself and Darren have spoke about him before. I think he was one of the first keepers that kind of really aspired young lads coming up to want to be goalkeepers. That kind of way. And he made goalkeeping cool, and he made it feel like it was fundamental to success, and they were leaders, and he brought a guile and a determination to it.
He was one of the first keepers who didn't make it the fat kid goes and goal.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? that it was something
or the untalented kid. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. So it was where kids were going, you know what? Yeah, maybe I can play less with the midfield, but I don't want it. I want to be like this big guy because he is unbelievable. He's actually on my force. So
one last thing I'd like to say about Schmoykel. I remember, and Dazzler, you probably remember this as well. Niall, you'll definitely remember this back in the day. I always remember opposition fans, you know, they wouldn't give him the credit that he actually deserved to say, he's jammy, you know, because, you know, the ball bounced off his leg or the ball bounced off, you know, uneducated fans at the time, because nobody had ever really seen this type of goalkeeper. The way he spread his body was so unique and new at that time, I think, because the traditional goalkeeper was like the cat, the reflexes, you know, the anticipation, but the anticipation of Peter Schmoykel and knowing how to just, the amount of times he stopped the goal going in with his toe, just because he spread himself so wide and so big, I think is, I think in a lot of ways, he really wrote the blueprint for goalkeepers like Petr Cech and players
for modern day keepers. He did. We talk now about you know, the goalkeepers and they come to block the ball and they use the K block and stuff like that. And all of that was brought after, you know, Schmoykel and him coming out and using his body the way he did, because he was one of the first keepers to use his feet in that way. And that's, you know, that's been a team at United over the last maybe 10 years with David De Gea. So I don't think there's a better keeper who uses their feet, certainly not for distribution, but for actually shot stop.
I watched an interview, Dazzler, and you'll all know, just a tiny little segue, and I'll let you move on, Niall. But it was very, very interesting. You both know I'm a big ice hockey fan. He talked about growing up, obviously in Denmark and in the kind of Scandinavian countries, ice hockey was huge. You know what I mean? And if you ever notice, the goalkeeper, even though the nets are small, they're constantly down on their knees. They spread their legs. They do that. And he said that he used to look at a lot of that, because I don't know whether he played it in school or whatever. I don't know. But I can kind of see where he's coming from, because you see a lot of saves in hockey. They have to put their legs out like that. You know what I mean? And they kind of spread their legs that way. So it was very interesting. When I remember hearing him talking about ice hockey and how goalkeepers in ice hockey use all of their body, kind of makes a lot of sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can see the blueprint that he laid down. You see it today, even in keepers, the likes of Allison or Manuel Neuer, or all the world-class keepers that are out there, Donnarumma and all. They all have that kind of that trait about them and stuff like that, you know. My first one I went for was, Ian, you'll be happy with this, was John Terry.
Yeah,
I went with John Terry as my first pick.
Should have been in there ahead of Lampard, to be fair. That's the one player I would say that would be ahead of Lampard for me. Without a doubt. Yeah.
I'd absolutely have him ahead of Lampard. 100%.
I would definitely say that.
I would have figured that, Darren.
well, I gathered that, Darren. I know you respect. No, Niall.
There's a tea lady at Chelsea who would have had in ahead of fucking Lampard.
She's a lovely woman.
Darren,
makes a great cup of Rosie.
Darren, give us your second pick.
Well, Eno's gone over on one of mine, so I had Schmoykel. Schmoykel was number 2 for me again. I just echo a lot of what Ian said. You know, he absolutely wrote the blueprint on the modern day goalkeeper. You know, and even if we look at just something that I certainly know I did as a kid, and every time I did it, people would look, but I only did it because I seen Peter Schmoykel do it. So you all remember how we used to throw the ball out one-handed like this, and he would start attacks like that, and because he felt like he could almost be more accurate with that than with his feet and stuff, you know. And same thing, I'd come and take a cross, and I used to, the guy that managed our team used to always say when we had corners against us, we had our 2 smallest lads, and they used to split the halfway line. So when if I could come and claim a ball, I'd be looking left or right to see which one of them had the most amount of space, and he'd be trying to get the ball out to their feet, and then they'd know they'd have someone else coming alongside them. Even the way that, I mean, he got a number of assists at United based on the quickness and the speed at which the ball came out and the accuracy of the throw and stuff like that. And he was involved in a lot, you know. He really started the attack from the back.
Excellent. Funny enough, we mentioned it on a previous show as well. You see a lot of it in the Sun, don't you?
Yeah,
as well. Absolutely. The Sun's very like him.
Big fan of Casper.
Ian, you give us your second then, because Schmoykel was obviously Darren's second.
I had a battle here because I said I was going to go 2-2. I was going to go 2 old school and 2 kind of the next generation. Listen, I'm going to sound a little bit. I suppose, like I said, I think Scholes should have been there in the first wave, and I still think he should be in there. So I'm going to go with Scholes. I'll give you my honorary mention. I had a battle between him and Fowler because Fowler was one of the first, one of the first strikers that, when he came on the scene. When you look at his stats in his first 2 years in particular, he was just astronomical. Liverpool had a habit of that, didn't they, with Michael Owen and Fowler coming on the scene, and then they kind of wane on a bit. But I suppose, look, Fowler bent over in front of Graham Lasso that day. I never forgave him, so he's not making my list. And he got an elbow in the back of the head for good measure. So well done, Graham Lasso. No, honestly, it was really close. But look, I'd be hypocritical if I didn't put Paul Scholes in there. Another player that probably should have made the first wave, in my opinion. Listen, what the only thing
I suppose the problem that you have with the Hall of Fame is the dominance of United in that period. Yeah. The problem that you have is you could put the first 8 in; they could be all United players.
Yeah, that's really it. Yeah,
even when you are like having a look down the list, you're kind of looking at the list and you're going, I think there was 24 on it. I think it was 10 United players or something like that counted. And I was like, how do you not? Again, as a United fan, this is quite difficult because I'm trying to make a list and you're trying to be, impartial. Yeah, you're trying to be impartial, and you're like, all right, well, if half the list is United and half the list is the rest of the league, for me, I went 2-2. Which is good. Yeah, it's fair.
Ian Wright was actually a close. On my second one, it was between Scholes, Ian Wright, and Robbie Fowler.
I'll tell you what, right? Ian Wright goes behind Frank Lampard. That's how little I think of Ian Wright. Just throwing that out.
It's only because he played for Celtic for a minute.
That's why I didn't even realise that. That's why he doesn't look at football north of the border.
It's only because he played for Celtic for a minute.
He sticks in the championship. He goes more south than north.
What you see, I hold grudges though. Right, he fell out with the Celtic fans there. I was like, right, fuck off. So Scalzi,
he's not the first, he won't be the last.
Listen, I don't care if Scalzi eats toenails or not. Like, he was a fucking hell of a footballer. My God, like, as I said, the only thing he didn't have was tackling.
It's weird. What I mean, when you're going down through the list and you're trying to decipher through it, and you're kind of looking at sort of, okay, you're obviously looking about your own team, but you're also trying to decipher down through the football and the moments, and then you're trying to decipher down about the personalities and all the other stuff and all to arrive at a pick. Sometimes it's an absolute nightmare to try.
That's the battle I was having today, and I was like, why do I not like Scholes? And I was like, well, right, on the pitch, there's nothing I didn't like about him. I think he's a shocking fucking analyst. I think that's for sure. I think even United fans would agree with that.
Yep.
But on the pitch, man, as majestic as they come, I mean, he had, as I said, bar like his last ditch tackles, he had absolutely everything. And I think Scholes was that kind of unsung hero that really, if you go back and watch that United team with him and Keane in the centre of the park, like, good Lord, that lad. Really,
Paul Scholes is one of those guys. If you give him a few months to get a bit fit, he could probably light up United's midfield even now, I'd say, with his vision and the way he plays.
I think Mrs. Scholes could light up the United midfield at this stage.
Yeah,
absolutely. Look at his like, goals aren't everything. We know that in football. You know, obviously that's the shiny bit. You know what I mean? Assists are now kind of considered. We've become very Americanized that assists are kind of like a vital part of the stat. It didn't used to always be the case, as you boys know.
Absolutely bugs the drawers off me.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Like goal contributions. They call it.
You see, let's say I'm a right back, and I take the ball halfway up the pitch. I cut inside. I pop the ball off. Somebody squares it, and you know, a striker knocks the ball in, and what does the right back get? Nothing. And he's done all the work. You know, he's created the chance by getting 50, 60 yards up the line. He's cut inside, he's created space on the outside, he's popped the ball into feet. Someone's literally squared a 10-yard ball across the box, and all of a sudden you're going, another assist, he's some baller, and you're like, no, hold on, lads, this is for. Sometimes it can be, you know, a pass to the centre midfield, a 4-yarder. Your man goes in a maze, he sticks it in the top corner, and he gets an assist, and you're like, lads, this is fucking horrific.
Yeah, the dynamic of the expectation now has changed so greatly now, isn't it? Where, you know, years ago, what you'd have a look is you'd have like your attacking midfielders and your forwards, and you'd look at them in terms of forward play and judge them. And your backs and your central defenders and all that, and your keepers would be all about clean sheets and defensive stuff and all that. But now there's an expectation that your back line should be scoring X amount of goals or pitching in with assists and all this kind of thing. And that sort of forgotten art of defending. And you know, when you talk to any world-class defender out there, and he'll tell you a clean sheet means so much more to him than a goal.
Well, how many? Here's one for you: is when the great Paulo Maldini looks back on his career, right? Do you think he worries about how many assists he had, or you know how many goals he had, or anything like that? Even someone who I'm surprised isn't on the lists for me, Marcel Desailly. You know what I mean? What he contributed, you know, to. I'm not saying he should be on this particular round, but he will be eventually. You know, you look at players like that.
He'd be late in the 9th round in the draft.
Yeah, well, it's very Americanized, so yeah, he will be. But no, I'm glad Dazzler agreed with me on that one, because
the Maldini thing. You're absolutely right. I would imagine Paulo Maldini can't even tell you how many goals he scored in his career, because I'd say they're so worthless to him.
No. Like Fabio Cannavaro. Do you think Fabio Cannavaro or Alessandro Nesta, should I say, or any of these boys, Franco Baresi? Wow, you know what I mean?
Even modern times, Bonucci and Chiellini and all, like, sure, even it's just
they don't give a fuck, you know.
And that's where, and I don't, you know, we're not starting off another show. That's the thing that irks me about Trent, about, you know, being a right back and not being able to defend. And I'm like, and that's why, you know, and listen,
I keep on saying, just stop getting nervous. He's a midfielder. Stop calling him a right back.
I heard today.
If you stop calling him a right back, you'll get over it.
Live score confirmed today that the most ball losses today in the Premier League are from Trent.
Yeah,
this year. Just thought I'd throw that in for you, Niall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
work for me.
Dazzler delighted. I'm sure that was him. Dazzler's texting me there going,
I'll allow him that for everything else he contributes, in fairness.
Assists.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, Ian, you went for Paul Scholes.
I went for Scalzi, yeah.
And that's a good show, because that's interesting on my list. We must have been kind of thinking the same, because I have both guys on my list. So okay. my second one coming up was actually Paul Scholes, but I also obviously have Robbie Fowler on my list.
Sure.
I also have Paul Scholes.
Okay. So
sorry, Jesus Christ.
That's interesting, from three guys who haven't conversed, and we have a Liverpool, a Man United, and a Chelsea fan on the panel.
Yeah.
And we've all gone for Paul Scholes. So that's an interesting one. So it'll be interesting to see if Paul Scholes makes the final four when they go through it themselves.
I have Scholes and Schmoykel as my two United representatives.
And me too.
From the list. And I have then Adams plus one other from the other list, you know.
Okay. Well, then what we'll do, give us then your fourth.
Hang on, and I'll get the onions out. The fourth pick on my list broke my heart. In the 94th minute, in the final game of the season against QPR, when we had one hand on the trophy after beating Sunderland at the Stadium of Shite, and up popped Sergio Aguero.
Good choice.
And that pains me.
Yeah.
However, what a footballer.
Absolutely. I toyed with putting him on the list, but you know what I did? You know why I didn't put him on it? The only reason he came out of my list
The Falklands War.
was the fact that he still feels really modern and really new. And I thought that maybe in order to do the list, because I was thinking there's no doubt 100% he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. There's no doubt about it.
Don't tell his body that, yeah.
But I just, yeah, true. But I just didn't feel that he should be. If you think of all the Premier League great players down through the years, before he even arrived on the scene, I think it's a bit early to put him in the second class. That's the only thing. Not out of football ability, not about what he achieved in the game. All that ticks all the boxes. I still feel because he only kind of, left Man City there last year or whatever it was, and then retired and all the other stuff that happened. I just think, to me, he still feels very new and very modern. It's like sometimes when we're wrestling fans as well, we talk about the WWE Hall of Fame, and most guys who go into it are guys who have retired. Now, I know he's retired and the health issues and that kind of thing and all, but he still feels very modern and very new to me, Well,
Niall, this is where my list is coming from, and I'm glad you segued there, because I'm going to surprise Dazzler again here. Because I was trying to think along those lines, and that's what I said. I know I was fucking with people today on the chat,
WhatsApp group,
thinking I'm gonna go all Chelsea, blah blah blah, and I could have easily done just like any one of us could have done. You know what I mean? Well, me and Dazzler could have, because
Niall couldn't, because there wasn't 4 Liverpool players on the
list.
That's
what I mean. Yeah, there was 2.
Pardon.
So, but I.
There wasn't 2. There was 1.
No, there's 2. There was Robbie Fowler and there was Michael Owen.
No, Michael Owen's a United player. Don't be silly.
No, listen, you're so fickle. You're so fickle. Would you stop? He gave up after the hammies. No, I went with listen, and I like to give reasons as to why and not just try and look cool here. I could have easily picked Drogba because of what he'd done. I think Drogba is as clutch as you get. It's easy to say, oh yeah, well, Aguero, blah, blah, blah. Look, Drogba had that 30-goal season as well, where like under Ancelotti was absolutely phenomenal. I know he wasn't always a 20-plus goal scorer, but I mean, as clutch a striker as you get, and I don't think anybody on the planet can argue that. However, I went with Ruud van Nistelrooy. Because I'm trying to keep consistent here in terms of, we're getting into the modern era now a little bit, but still,
you're somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle, yeah, exactly. Without getting too far ahead, I think. Listen, as someone who played as a striker myself, and had the nickname of John Aldridge for a period for the old tap-ins, I was literally a fox in the box myself, and I got the ankles booted off me, because of it. I looked at players like Ruud van Nistelrooy, Hernan Crespo. I mean, Batistuta to an extent, but Batistuta had bullets in his boots as well. But, in particular, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Pippo Inzaghi, and John Aldridge, players like that. I've always had a respect for that type of striker. Get the job done. They'll finish whatever's in front of them. I mean, nobody. Look, if Ruud van Nistelrooy's record speaks for itself, doesn't it? Both at PSV, United, Real Madrid. You went to Schalke then, didn't he? Schalke after, yeah. I don't know, Dazzler. You're the United fan here. I mean, in my opinion, Ruud van Nistelrooy is one of the first. He's not even talked about enough in the modern era, which is strange.
No, I listen. He's right up there for me. I suppose when I looked at the list myself, I wanted to go 2 and 2 just so I wasn't kind of, loading up with red jerseys. But I don't know. I'd probably find it hard to have Van Nistelrooy ahead of Aguero. And again,
you see my reason for it though, in terms of I'm putting my list.
I can understand why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand absolutely, but and listen, I don't think there's many cases in here where you couldn't argue for such a body to win ahead of such a body, and
yeah.
So, and as we firmly believe that everybody on this list is going in at one stage or the other. I mean, next season, what are we going to get? what's left on this list plus 6 more.
Yeah.
So it's you're gonna just dilute the list down over the next number of years, and add a couple of others. But yeah, listen, I think Rude was unbelievable. He was just exactly what United needed at that time, which was a goal scorer.
And clutch when you needed to be as well. He wasn't just someone who stat packed. You know what I mean? He was actually somebody that.
No, he always scored goals against good teams, and stuff like that. And he was always in.
What a finisher, man! He wasn't even just one of those
smashing finisher, absolutely unbelievable finisher. Really, really was, And I mean, you look at the goal he got. Obviously,
ugly motherfucker, but good lord, what a player!
The goal he got that morning against Fulham, that Saturday morning, the early kickoff, picked the ball up in the halfway line. Went through 5 or 6 of them, they weren't even there, like a hot knife through butter, and then past the keeper, and you're thinking, Jesus Christ, it was unbelievable. Didn't probably get the worldwide recognition.
That's what I mean.
As maybe he should have. I don't know whether he was an unlikable character, because any of the other guys that kind of had the statistical impact that he had at United seemed to always be higher on the list and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why I look at, because he's from the same era of some of my favorite strikers. Like obviously Batistuta was getting a little bit older, obviously with Fiorentina, and then it probably moved to Roma or Inter at that time, I want to say. And Roma, it was Roma. You're 100% right. And then you saw Crespo and all coming along with Lazio and scoring those hitting those numbers. Christian Vieri.
Was that Parma first, wasn't he, Crespo?
Parma was his first team, and then obviously around the same time, Ruud van Nistelrooy went. He broke the world record then and went to Lazio, I think, for 36 million, and I think he scored 30 plus goals that year as well. And then Christian Vieri was fucking smashing goals as well. So when you look at, and obviously Del Piero and players like that was just it's not all about goals with certain players. Obviously, when you're bringing the likes of Del Piero in, but I think, I agree. That's what I meant by saying that I don't think Ruud van Nistelrooy is talked about the way he should be. When we look back at the greatest strikers of all time, because for me, he's without a shadow of a doubt up there. Certainly in a top 20 list anyway. Just for getting you goals that you need, and so Ruud is my third choice. So I've 3 Man United players now. Unbiased motherfuckers. There you go.
Now for a Chelsea one.
Well, I have to. Obviously, I have to.
It's coming. I'll give you my 4th choice then, and I'll help you out here, Ian. I went for Ashley Cole as my 4th choice. Just to kind of balance it out somewhat, if you like. But I just think Ashley Cole, unbelievable player.
Arguably the best left back in Premier League history. Arguably,
yeah.
I think he was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. He was one of the only players that when you were going up against him, and you had at one stage, obviously we say had Ronaldo playing on that right hand side,
Hated playing against him, didn't he?
Huh?
Ronaldo said it as well, didn't he? He hated playing against him.
Yeah, because he was such a big performer for United, and you'd see Ashley Cole and you just think he's not having a good game today, as Ronaldo, because he was up against Cole and stuff like that, and he was a really, really good footballer, I have to say.
Yeah. I think, Darren, if my memory serves me right, when we did our all-time Premier League combined 11s, am I right thinking Ashley Cole was in your team? When we go back on that episode,
he was.
Really sure he was.
Yeah, I think he's tops, I have to say.
Yeah.
I know Dazzler's team inside out after I watched it at the time I was watching.
As I said, just a fabulous player, longevity, absolutely brilliant. Just performed at such a high level week in, week out. And again, I suppose not dissimilar to Schmoyker either. Made that position cool as well, didn't he? In the way he played, it brought a lot of focus to it and stuff like that. And as you said, some top class players he went up against and generally came out winning. So that was my 4 anyway. John Terry, Robbie Fowler, Ashley Cole, and Paul Scholes.
So I think I'm the only one with one more to go, haven't I? Because Dazzler gave his fourth as well, didn't he?
I've got Schmoykel, Scholes, Adams, and Aguero.
Yeah.
Right. For my number 4, again, keeping it within the kind of the timeline that I've done, but obviously early in the next phase, I had to go with John Terry. I had to put obviously a Chelsea player in there. Purely because of what he'd done for the club. Again, I said it again, at the start, I would have John Terry in there ahead of any Chelsea player. Purely because, he sat under the learning tree of, Frank LeBoeuf and Marcel Desailly. Learned defending the right way, no nonsense defender. Look, it's easy if you're a Man United fan, you can pick Vidic. I get it. Vidic, I would have loved to imagine a partnership of Vidic and John Terry. Good Lord, forget about it.
Imagine Terry and Thiago Silva.
Oh, Jesus! Don't even tease me.
I've absolutely no problem with John Terry. I mean, if he wins a European Cup the way he won us one, I've no problem with him. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Booting fucking Alexis Sanchez up the hole. Get off the pitch, you cunt. Now look, Terry, like I said, a product of being on the pitch and on the training pitch with someone like a Marcel Desailly and Frank LeBoeuf, who wasn't the best, but at the same time a very cultured foot. I mean, Dazzler, you're a big Premier League fan. Frank LeBoeuf was all right. He had some long range passing on. He was, these boys come back from winning the World Cup in 98. And, if you're a 17, 18-year-old player being around these guys and having the kind of potential that the likes of a John Terry had is one thing, but then going on to fulfill the potential and then captain in Chelsea, mainly under Ranieri, because obviously he got loaned out to Forest with under Vialli. When he came back, man, you could just see how much he was getting better and better and better. And then obviously when Jose came in, it was like, wow, this guy is the real deal. Top scorer and the scored the most goals out of any defender. I know we mentioned earlier, I'm not trying to be hypocritical about defenders scoring goals, but the fact that he did score so many goals is quite an achievement as well. 60 plus goals in the Premier League. Just as I say, a captain, a leader, a legend, and he definitely deserves.
I'm about to come out like Gaiman Andrews with the red book going, John Terry, this is your life.
I know, I'm telling you. I always get emotional talking about big JT, but no, for me.
On page 12, do we have pictures of his outfit selling the tours around Stamford Bridge and the training ground, or what's the crack?
No, we're sanctioned at the moment. We're not allowed to show them.
I just want to go through the lads.
I played the fifth.
Just before we finish, lads, I want to go through the picks. Would
you agree though with my pick and for the right reasons? In fairness, you understand.
He was in my four. He was in my four, so I have to agree.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree anymore now. I think he's smashing, really do.
Yeah, top player.
And just for all the United fans at home, obviously, if I was picking a United centre half, and I think I've mentioned this before, I would 110% be putting Rio in before Vidic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's okay.
Me too.
Well, that leads me on to my next point nicely. Greg from Retrotainment Recast, and of course, Ian, your buddy on the slab out there.
Shout out YouTube. My fellow Bray man, yeah.
Sent in his 4. And Darren, that's a beautiful segue into that because his first pick was Amanda Vidic. Then Ian will be happy.
Amanda Vidic.
Yeah, Amanda Vidic, not Nemanja Vidic. His second pick was Czech. His third pick, he agreed with Darren, Aguero, and his fourth pick was Paul Scholes. So we're all kind of, in a way, thinking and deciphering down through this.
Well, look, I went Scholes, Aguero, and then I had a centre back and a keeper as well. So it wasn't a million miles away, Mel Gregster.
No, Greg knows his football. In fairness, you could see what he was going for there.
Ted from Retrotainment and Retrotainment Recast as well also sent in his picks,
Let's just put a warning on this. This could go anywhere, Ted.
Yeah, this is not Wolves finishing in the top 6.
Ted could have Jurgen Klinsmann, Roberto Di Matteo, Steve Agruzovic, and Jeremy Goss.
Here, leave Di Matteo out of this. You could have named anyone else. You could have said like fucking, I don't know.
He wasn't. He actually wasn't a million miles off us either, because he had Paul Scholes in his 4. He also had Robbie Fowler in his score, and he agreed with you, Darren. He had Rio Ferdinand in his 4.
Good man, Ted. I like it.
But
repeat them. So we had Matt Letizia.
No, I hadn't mentioned Matt Letizia. I was holding him till the end because he was kind of the shot across the barrel. You have to destroy it there in now.
Well, you know what? Well, let's talk about it. Matt Letizia, Ted chose.
Yeah, now, Matt Letizia, Scholes, Rio, and Fowler.
Knowing Ted the way only I can know Ted. I'm trying to do my best. Ric Flair / Death the Road, baby. Ted has a method to his madness there, in fairness. And let's be real. Is he wrong when you look at the goals and the bits that he done for Southampton? A one club man, like
Matt Letizia was the human highlight reel of the Premier League.
Fact. So I don't think Ted can be scrutinised in any way, shape, or form. And I'm not just sticking up for my fellow Bray boy. I don't think he can be scrutinised in any way for this, because I had said earlier on that I went with my 2 picks from the old school that like literally helped build a Premiership. If you're telling me Matt Letizia wasn't a big part in helping build that early days of the Premiership, then you're on crack. He was fucking phenomenal.
Yep.
One of the most underrated footballers of all time. I'd say he was the worst trainer of all time. I'd say he was horrible. But this lad just woke up, and if you just like, my God.
I'd say if you brought him to Pip's Deli over in Crumlin, he could do that breakfast challenge and go and train after.
Easy.
Yeah.
For
100%.
3 points at Guinness as well. Not a bother.
Yeah, an animal.
4 very good picks, but it's nice to see between the 5 of us, that there was very similar thinking in the way we deciphered down through the list and stuff like that. There wasn't.
Did Dino give his list?
No, Dino didn't get a list into us, and Mark was going to send us in the list, but he got caught up today, so it'll be interesting.
Dino, there wasn't enough Liverpool players on the list for Dino. What'd you say there, Daz?
I said Dino's on the list himself. It's the missing list. Dino,
shots fired.
You just made the list, Dino.
Yeah. Well, lads, that was a lot of fun. It'll be interesting to see over the next week or two. I'm not sure when they drop the 4, when they actually announce them, or whether they do one a week or something like that towards the end of the season. But absolute pleasure having you on to go through it. And I'm actually very surprised that we're all pretty similar in our thinking and in how we arrived at our 4 picks and the crossover as well. When you think you have a list there of whatever it is, I suppose 24 or whatever's on the list, it's mad to think that we came out in a very similar way of thinking about who we had on it and stuff like that. So yeah, absolute pleasure. So we would say to our viewers, as always, head over to YouTube and smash that subscribe and bell notification button, and obviously drop your picks into the comments. Let us know who your final 4 would be to make up the class of 2022. Would you stay a little bit old school? Would you go a little bit more modern, or would you do what Ian did and had a kind of a blend in there? Interesting to see what your thoughts are. Lads, a pleasure as always. Cheers.